Okay guys, we're out and it's a lovely sunny day, and as you can see with the shadow, I've got all my shims ready to substitute with my little chart, so off we go. First up is my 3.85mm shim, which I'm just substituting for a 3.75mm shim, so I'm just looking at a slightly bigger tolerance basically, bigger gap is what I'm aiming for. Put a bit of oil on it as well, and then just pop that in. And I'm just going to do that all the way along. So again, you don't need to see that, you get the gist. Okay guys, with the back, with the engine cover off, if you want to get around the back, it's really easy to get these out. You use a little magnet like that, and you just click it onto the follower, and it pulls the whole thing out with the shim on it as well. So there you go, so you just pull it out like that, nice and easy, piece of cake. Okay, 4 across, the one I want in there, I want a 395 to go in there, which I didn't buy because obviously there are some shims I need. There's a 395 in there, so I'm going to take the 395 out of there and put a 385 in there, which will give me more clearance. The only shims I'm doing are the exhaust, because all the inlets are fine. See again, look, even with the camera in the way, I can get to it with my little magnet. Lovely, isn't it? Don't even have to touch it, although I just did. As with anything, if you take it out, it's nice to put a bit of engine oil on it, so I put lots of engine oil on it and put it back in. So same as when I put the cams in, I'm just going to put lots of engine oil on it, and then it'll all be good. And I'll just put my 385 back in here. Oh God! Whilst reaching around the camera, come on. There we go. Right, so I've got these two to do now. You get the gist. There you go, guys. Job done. It looks exactly the same. Specialist tools needed is a little magnet, a micrometer, a little tiny screwdriver hooking the shims out, a teaspoonful of engine oil, and a mad chart. Well, there you go, guys. Just got a handful of chips left. I'm going to go and cash them in at Ferrari. You may scoff, but they cost me 120 quid for that little lot, so I think these chips do have some value. Okay guys, the next thing we've got to do is remove the old gasket. Now, we all have our favourite little tools for doing that. What I tend to do is try and find one that works well. You don't want to be scratching the surface here. You can use a round edge like that knife works quite well, because it's got a sort of a rounded edge, so it doesn't dig in the corners. And if it's got a kind of a sharpish front edge to it, it sort of digs into the gasket quite nicely. So you could try that. The whole idea is these black gaskets do sort of adhere themselves quite firmly to the thing. Actually, this one's pretty good. It doesn't dig in. It feels pretty good actually, and it does seem to be doing the business. Obviously, you're going to get the odd little scratch. I mean, I'm in real close as well, but you just don't want to be digging into the surface of the head too much. This won't happen again, because when I put it back on, I'm going to put a thin bead, tiny smidge of silicone, and that will stop the gasket sticking to the face, if that makes sense. And also it means that you've got a better chance with your cam covers. The other thing to bear in mind is that you need to block these up, because you don't want any debris going down in there and getting into the oil, because it might go into the main bearings or somewhere like that. Here's the drains here for the cams, just their little drain holes, you see, so you don't want those being blocked up either, so just make sure they're clear. You just have to sort of try and keep stuff away from it as much as possible. It is a bit time consuming, there's no quick way of doing this. But like I say, using silicone on the gasket, and I mean just a tiny amount. It's not, you don't want it sort of splurging over the edge here. No way. You just want the tiniest, like almost a smidge of silicone that you just gives you a sort of a seal, so that when you bolt it down, it doesn't squidge out. It's the smallest amount, probably like a millimetre bead of silicone all the way around that you put your gasket on with, and then do the same to the cam covers. And then that way, if you ever have to take them off again, the silicone comes away from this much more easily than the paper, which bonds itself. And the other thing is, of course, the silicone gives you a seal that you don't have to really, I mean, obviously you've got a set torque loading for those nuts, for the cam cover nuts, but if you oh look, there's a bit gone down the plug hole. That doesn't matter, I'm not worried about it going down the plug hole because I'll just vacuum it out later. It's going into there, it mustn't go into here. That's the main thing. Yeah, it's just, sorry, I'm just explaining to Emily. It's just finding the right tool that doesn't scratch it. This is nice because you can kind of get the angle wrong and it doesn't dig into the head, you know, so that it does make sort of quite short work of it if you take your time. It comes off quite nicely, actually. Yeah, so it's ideal, really. Okay, guys, when you're done, just get a paintbrush and brush out the debris and little bits are lurking. You'd be amazed where they hide. I suppose you could use a vacuum cleaner or something like that, but a brush really gets in all the areas. Obviously when I rebuild, once I put all the gasket on and got the cams in, I do actually drizzle a little tiny bit of oil in there, so it doesn't come over here, but just drizzle a little bit of oil in there and a little bit of oil in there, so that when the engine starts up again, it's got a little bit of oil in there, if you see what I mean. Okay guys, you can just see I've cleaned up my camshafts really nicely, wrapped them in film to protect them, and just marked them, put a time mark on them, and also this is indicating that this is camshaft number 2. So I'll show you how to put it in. First thing then is I'm going to put some engine oil, just ordinary engine oil, in this groove here in the seal, and that is, if you fill it up, then when you start the engine first time, it will after doing the rebuild, it lubricates it nicely, and also put some around the camshaft itself. So I'm just going to do that. So just around there, and then slide the seal on from the back. Which I hope I'm doing this in frame, I can't see. Yeah, I think I am. Okay, so it just goes up on over there. There we go. The next thing is I'm going to put some silicone sealer just in this front journal. The reason for that is that obviously you don't want to go this side of it, you want to stay on the outside of it, and that's because if those seals leak, it's just a pain, isn't it? Because you've got to take it out again. And they apparently, I'm told, are known for leaking. Also, when I did take this apart, there was silicone actually in here, so someone else obviously thinks the same as me. And that is to put silicone in there. Obviously you don't put too much in. You'll see I'm kind of squeegeeing it because I don't want to have too much in there. Obviously take your time on it and make sure it's not deep in that channel. It's just the tiniest bit in that channel, just to help the rubber seal. But what you can do is put quite a bit, I say quite a bit, that's relatively speaking, on this front face, because the rubber seal stops. You don't want to go into that oil drain away, so you want to just, this is like the silicone here can't make its way backwards because the rubber seal will stop it. So it's sort of like a last line of defense. If the rubber seal fails, then this here will prevent it leaking. And you can go quite a lot. This is the outside edge of the engine, so you can put a reasonable amount on here, because it will just squidge outside the car, not inside the engine. That's quite important. Okay, so yeah, that makes absolutely certain that that seals when you put the camshaft on. Right, the next thing, engine oil. You just put engine oil in all the journals here, and you can be as liberal as you want with it. Fill up those little holes in there as well. Okay, just go along and do the same on your camshaft as well. Obviously when you get to the front here where we've got silicone, just a silicone sealer, just try and not to get it on the silicone sealer. So we go from this side and just tickle it in there, really. You do want oil on here, so remember when you get that first start up, before the oil goes up into the gets pumped up here, you know you haven't got camshafts running dry, because that is obviously no good. I'm just, so do it on every journal. Okay, I'll do this out of frame because then I can just get on with it. And my timing mark's pointing in, and then you just lay the camshaft into its little slot. Okay, let's do that. Like so. Now, just moving around to check that, that's all nicely seated in. Now what you will find with a camshaft is that they do like to settle into not necessarily the timing position. I mean, you've obviously got to be somewhere in your timing position, but they do like to settle. So that's pretty much like that. So it might not be bang on its timing position, if you know what I mean. It might be just a few degrees out, because that's where the cam lobes sort of want to sit. Allow it that bit of leniency, because it helps you when you bolt it up. If you try and keep it bang on its timing mark, it will, in fact this one's pretty close, but the two on the other side, they're actually quite a few degrees out. They're about 20 degrees out. Otherwise, if you try and turn it onto its timing mark exactly, it might try and sit up, because two of the lobes might be pressing directly down onto the valves. So you will find a kind of a natural position where it wants to sit. So now the next thing is I'm going to put oil on the caps, remembering their orientation, and pop the caps back on. Nice lot of oil squidged out of that, which is what we want. And what there is a sequence to this, so remember, if you tighten it incorrectly, you're going to risk damaging your camshaft. Okay, and just one more. Right. Now the other thing is, remember, oiled threads. So these need to be oiled. So put little blobs of oil on all of your cap threads, because when you torque them up, they're on oiled threads. That's how it would be. That's how it's specified. Or if it's not, it should be. Okay. Lotus give you all this kind of technical stuff. Their manuals are pretty good actually, and Aston's are good as well. Okay, so that's that. Little washers. Count them all in, count them all out, count them all out, count them all in. You know, so you make sure you've got them all. If you got one missing, you're going to lose an awful lot of sleep. Now at the moment I'm not doing this in a sequence. All I'm doing is just getting everything on ready for talking it down, and you talk it down real slow. You just want edging it down bit by bit. There's no rush, just take your time with it, because you just want to pull it evenly. And also I perform a little kind of check as I do it. I actually rotate the camshaft and feel, not rotate it round, but just turn it like 5 degrees one way, 5 degrees the other way, to check that it's not biting or binding or doing anything weird. Because you can't take it for granted that something isn't strange isn't happening. I once did a crank on a Lotus that for some reason when we, when I put it in, the kind of crank case is split. It's on an old 912 engine, I think it is, high compression, 180 horsepower, 2 litre from the 80s, and it had this weird thing that the crank case was sort of split, and it bound up a little bit. In the end I found out what it was, but you just got to take these things steady. Okay guys, so what do? We just talk them up evenly now. So I just pinch them as tight as I can. You see this one's actually down further than the rest. So these ones are more proud up this end. In other words, this is tightened down. I've just done these by finger tight. This wants to come down this end because these lobes here are nowhere near the buckets. But these lobes are pointing onto the bucket, so this end of the camshaft needs to come down. So what we do is, if we go in between the two and just tweak that first, like that, just give them like a quarter of a turn or something, and then that one, and check that there's no resistance. It should go real easy, okay? And just knit. I'm literally taking up the slack. I'm not actually doing them up, I'm just taking up the slack. This one I'm doing up like that because, okay, that's it, that's all good. That's all good. Yeah, that's nice. And it seems like I'm doing one end more, but remember, it's these lobes that are pressing the valves, so they're the ones doing all the work. Now, what I do before we carry on is I stop. I'd say there's probably about 1.5 mil to go, and I grab hold of the cam and I just turn it and check that it's free to move, and it is. So there's no binding. Okay, and then we carry on. If you just do that all the way, you won't have any problem. You see, I'm just doing such a small amount each time. What can sometimes happen, it hasn't happened here, but the little inserts, which I'll show you later, they're kind of like the dowels, can sometimes catch on the actual, I mean, they're very precisely machined, but they can sometimes catch, and you meet with resistance, and you don't keep talking it down. You just take it off, take the cap off, resettle it, and try again. So I'm just looking for slack, and literally I'm not even putting any energy into this at all. It's, I'm not talking, I'm not using any kind of... Right, so I'm going to turn the cam again, just to make sure we're fine. Yeah, good. Should be able to turn it with your hands. Even on a V12, we obviously got two more lobes, down here. You should be able to turn it with your hands. If you can't, then you've got a problem. Something's binding. I haven't done this one up here at all, really, because there was no pressure on this end at all. The lobe is up, as you can see, so these kind of just buzzed on with my fingers. Like I say, the camshaft kind of lies in a particular way when you actually put it in. It finds its own level, around about the timing mark. Okay, nice little giveaway as you see oil squidge out when you've reached your stop. Okay, we've reached our stop on all of those. I'm not torquing them up, all I'm doing now is just making sure they're all just kind of nipped. I shall torque them up later. And obviously I won't forget either. One more quick check. Turn the cam, yes, that's nice, lovely. Okay, on to the last cam. I've actually done the other two on the other side. So just going to take off the last caps and then do that one, but it's just a repeat of the process you've already seen. I'll put the cam belt on today, hopefully we'll get it on before it gets dark. Yeah?
There's a sensor on the bell housing, what would it be for?
On the bell housing on the gearbox.
No, on the bell housing. Yeah.
Well, it'll be on the gearbox, would be the reverse light on the gearbox. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. These little high pad magnets. These little high pad magnets are great, aren't they? Look. Especially when you haven't got long fingernails. Incidentally, if you had a seized camshaft or something like that, you would see scoring in here and also scoring in there. And as you can see, these are lovely. All white metal still, but if you had lines in there or scoring, you'd have like, that's where debris would have gone in. Or see, there's a little tiny mark in that one, that's just where a little tiny piece of debris has gone in. But yes, if they were badly scored, then if it had oil starvation or something like that, all this aluminium would pick up and stick itself to the camshaft. Right, I'm going to get on and do this, the camshaft, but I was just going to show you that seal there. So this is the last line of defence. That little elbow there is where I've got silicone, and then you've got the rubber seal. So the rubber seal obviously does its bit, but if it failed, you've got that little bit of a right angle in there where I've put silicone. So that's its last line of defence, just to make sure it doesn't leak. So that's why I've done it like that. So this morning I'm going to do all the tensions, torques on the on these cam caps, which are supposed to be 6.5 foot-pounds. So I've got my bar, which is just, I think I might need an extension. I'll tell you what, let's get that plenum out of the way. It's not even put on. So yes, 6.5 foot-pounds. So this is 1 foot. So we just pull it until it reads that. 6.5 pounds on my scales. Right. Let's try it from there. That should be better. Right, that's 5. That's 6. And a half, there we go. Same again. Don't want to get an extension, I like to keep it nice and close, to be honest. And it's starting to rain. Oh God, how annoying. That's why I haven't taken my engine cover off, because it's looking a bit threatening today. Right, so 4, 5, 6.5, lovely. God, you always sweat a bit when you do these little things up. because they're so small. 4, 5. Oh, if you want to try and do it in one movement as well, to be honest. 6.5, lovely. And pull it at right angles, of course. You guys will probably be using torque wrenches. I like these better. Okay, so just do that to all of them, all the way along. I think I'm going to have to dodge the rain. Okay, catch you later. Been trying to dodge the showers today, so back on this again, just tightening up the other bank. I've done this side. I've got to double check this side, so I always sort of do them all up and then I check them because, you know, you wouldn't think you'd miss something, but you could do. It doesn't hurt just to go over them all again, just to make sure that, that you've done them all. So just costs a little bit of time, that's all. Okay, that's all good. Now to torque these up. These are all 6.5 foot-pounds for anyone that wants to know. I always dread doing them up. Mind you, the big end bolts on the V8 Esprit, which I'm going to do later, they're tiny. You just think, oh my god, how can it take all that torque? Okay guys, right, I've now checked all of the cam cap torques, double checked them as well. So we're okay, we're good to go now. So the next stage is setting the cams into their correct timing positions. I don't know if you remember when I said that when I bolted them in, I just set them so that they would go in. They sometimes want to go in a way that is not necessarily on their timing mark, but near it. So I always let them just go to the nearest position to the timing mark because of the lobes, the way they fall. Like this one is just off its timing mark, but that was where it wanted to be when I bolted it in. Now I can actually set it up on its timing mark just by turning the cam. So I'm going to turn it. I'll turn it with a socket because then you can see me doing it. But you can turn it with your hand. So guys, to put it in context, it's on the end cap, just there. There's a little timing mark. Okay, let me just position myself. Now, I can't see that through the viewfinder, but you have to take my word for it, there's a little tiny stamp on the cam itself. It's like a little nick. And there's also a little mark on the cap. And there's also another mark on the cap here. By the way, I have noticed some pictures on the web where people have got the caps the wrong way round. This mark always points that way. But I have seen obviously some engines that have been taken apart and people have not put the caps around the right way. But anyway, so you can turn, look, you know, you can turn the cam a fair bit, you see, but it always wants to spring to sort of that position. So when I put the cam in, because of the way the cam wants to spring, I just let it go in that way. But in fact, the cam needs to turn a bit like that, which is probably not in its most relaxed position, so I'm going to get my head in the way so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. So we're just on that mark there, so now it lines up. So those two are set. Don't need to lock them, just keep an eye on them because they might pop, but just, you know, when you tighten up the belt you can just keep an eye on them and make sure they all line up once the belt is taut. Okay, so let's put this belt on this side. The next thing to do to make life really easy on yourself for putting the cam belt on, which is not difficult, is just to get a screwdriver in there, lever against that, okay, and then get the socket and tighten this up. That will hold it in that position, which is the slack position, and lets you get your cam belt on. here are the cam belts that I got from Super Performance. They're not sided, so you just put them on anyway. I always like the writing to run so that when I'm looking at them, they're that way. Okay, and I am just going to check the profile of the teeth with the one that came off. I want to check that they are the same belt, that I've been given the right belt. So I'm just going to check it with the old one a second. Right then guys, I've just checked the profile of the teeth and everything on the new belt, and it does correspond with the old one, so that's absolutely fine. It's always a wise idea to check stuff, because you can never take it as read that someone sent you the right part. So if you just blindly put on a cam belt, just assuming that it's the right one, you could end up in a bit of trouble. So it's wise to, oh, incidentally, you know, to get it in there, you just twist it and drop it in. It's absolutely fine doing that. Now, obviously, I'm trying to do it with a camera in the way. I tell you what, I'm going to go in from the bottom first, because it is difficult with the camera in the way. But basically, you just pop it in like that, and then it flips in underneath like that. I hope that's on camera. I can't quite see. Yeah, it is. Okay. So yes, what I was saying about the belts, make sure you know you've got the right one. Don't rely on the guy in the parts department to have sent you the right belt, because you know, at the end of the day, he could have made a mistake. He or she could have made a mistake, and it's not actually ultimately in their interest to, you know, get it wrong, but at the same time, it's not their responsibility to get it right either. So, you know, and at the end of the day, if you fitted the wrong belt and it went bang, you would just get a, well, sorry mate, I thought you said a T, a Mondial T. Well, actually, a Mondial T's got one belt, but you know what I mean. Right, guys, I am going to have to move the camera, because I can't do this with you. Well, I might be able to do it from the top. Right, guys. Even without the camera in the way, this has proved to be a bit of a pain, because with the jockey wheel, the tensioner, with the tensioner, which is normally here, even with that pushed right over so we've got plenty of room, the belt is really tight going up round this edge here. It just will not hook over. So plan B is I put little clips, these little bulldog clips, to hold the belt, which is they're a bit of a there you go, there's one there. You need to just hold the belt in position. Let me just there's one there, you see, just clipped on the edge, and that kind of holds the teeth into place and gives it a little bit of tension, and then it goes up onto the clip at the top there, as you see, and then there's another one up there holding it, and then there's all the slack. And this is, I think, by far the easiest way to do it. So you take the tensioner off, and then I'm going to even attempt it with you guys watching. Hold on. And with the tensioner still fully adjusted over, what you do is you put the top, hook it behind the belt, put the top one in first. I'm doing this one-handed. Top one in first, use it as a pivot, and then swing the bottom two lugs over, and that will get you into position like. And remember guys, I'm doing this one-handed. Oh, I'm going to change hands. Okay. And it really does, I've just done it, so it does do it. It swivels over quite easily actually. Like that, you see, now we're on. That is the easiest way to do it. Then, put your bolts on, which I'll do. I won't make you watch that. So I will make you watch this, because this is interesting. Well, not interesting, but these are not normal washers. These are spring washers. So just bear that in mind. Don't swap them out for normal washers if they're corroded. There are nylox on here as well. So you've got spring washers and nylox. Obviously Ferrari are fairly cautious about you dropping a nut, if you pardon the expression, onto your cam belt. So it's spring washers and nylox fitted here, yeah, that is obviously so they don't vibrate loose. Another check to do while the belts are off or when you've got them loose is just check the sprocket drives and make sure that there is no play in these at all. Obviously an early sign of problem would be oil leaking from them, because then the seal wouldn't be seating properly as it's running and you'd get an oil leak. So that would be the first sort of warning sign of an imminent problem. I'm just going to go across the top and wiggle them from up here. Well, hopefully not wiggle them from up here. Yeah, that's good. No, that's nice. Another thing is that people always say replace the water pump. Well, as you can see, this one is absolutely fine. It doesn't look particularly new, but it feels like a new water pump. It has no play in it at all. Even the seal is good because it doesn't spin. It just spins a bit and stops, and it's nice and smooth. So that's another good sign that the water pump is fine. Right then guys, I've just rechecked my timing, and these little nuts are just nipped up. They're not done up fully, but they are nipped up. Now when I release this, the tensioner will just spring back and take up the tension on the belt, as you can see there. And like I say, the engine is now still on its timing marks, which is fine. I can take the clips off here and then look at different ways of tensioning the belt, of which there are many, but obviously can't do that yet because I've still got to do the other side. So I'm going to leave it like that for now, but and then we'll just go on to the other side, and then I'll come back to you. So there's the other side that needs doing exactly the same process. Take the tensioner off, not the bearing, but just the whole unit. Take it off and put the belt on that way. That's definitely an easier way to do it, I think. I'm sure the voyeurs among you are just dying to see me put another cam belt on, aren't you? So why not? Obviously it's easier for me because I haven't got air conditioning. So yeah, I mean, seeing as you can't charge the air conditionings anymore, they're pretty much useless having one. It's just, you're just carrying around extra weight, so you might as well get rid of them. Oh, incidentally, I've got to time these up, so just so you know, I just thought I'd throw the belt on for you, and I'm just going to time the camshafts up now this side. There we go, Mark's coming round. I might have to lock this cam. He wants to spring back. Oh well, we'll see what happens. So yes, exhaust cam on the bank nearest the firewall does want to spring back on himself, but he is holding at the moment, so we'll just see what happens. Whoops, I've gone the wrong way on that one. I'm just doing the inlet cam again, getting it a little bit more precise so you can see it. Oh, that sprung the other way. There you go, see? There we go, there we go, there we go. Whoop. Oh, I've gone past it again, just a little bit. On the Aston, you've got, you actually measure the valve depression. So many thou on number one on inlet, so many thou on exhaust. So both cams are open, and you got that on the rock crossover, where the exhaust is just, on number one, the exhaust is just coming off. I think it's by 50 thou depression, and the inlet is just going on by something like 50 thou depression, and it varies from an automatic to a manual because the automatic needs more torque because it's pulling from essentially no revs, and the manual actually it has a more fierce overlap, so you've got more power but less torque. Anyway, bit of trivia for you. I'm just going to put these clips on. My reference to the Aston V8 Vantage was I'm talking about an old school Newport Pagnell car, not the wet pants V8 Vantage that Daniel Craig drives. Sorry, big fella, I'm only kidding. Right, but yes, it was an old school V8 Vantage. Okay, let me clip this on this side and then have a look and see what's going on here. Let's move it a bit to the edge. There you go, and that's got a nice grip on it. Right guys, I'm going to try and get from the top so you can see it, just for a bit of fun, and see how we get on. I personally don't like locking the cams up solid, because whenever you put a belt on, there's always a little bit of, you need a little bit of movement just to, so it finds its teeth. If you lock everything solid, you give the belt probably a little bit of jip, trying to get it on. Right guys, another little fitting tip is when you've got these two lined up and you bridge you put the belt around these two top bits and they line up perfectly and they're not clamped, but I pegged the thing to them. This next run, the straight run that goes around here, that's the next bit you do. You don't bother with that bit, you do this next run. Sometimes when it's down the bottom here, it's half on a tooth, half off. So you can just tweak the cams around a little tiny weeny bit, anti-clockwise, to allow it to jump on to that tooth, if that makes sense, because then when you do the tensioner, it pulls them back and pulls the tension back into that side. So if you're sort of half a tooth out down here, just adjust them a little bit. You can stock it on this one, not that one, this one, because it's clamped here, so it'll drag that one round and it'll just jump onto there, and then you can release the tensioner. And it will, obviously you check your timing and make sure your timing marks are correct, but the whole idea is that you're just trying to get rid of the big slack, the big piece of bowed slack that was in the other shot that I showed you. So I've just tweaked them around a bit, it's jumped into the notch, and then that's allowed me to get my tensioner on. Right then guys, I checked the timing up on the top here with the camshafts, and that's all fine. Engine obviously still at TDC. Remember, I haven't locked my camshafts because I do like to just have them a little bit free, so that I've got a little bit of leeway. If I'm sort of just a quarter of a tooth out down here, I can just tweak them around a bit, rotate them towards the slack, the long side of the belt, a little tiny bit, allow it to jump on, and then when I release the tensioner, it kind of pulls them back again. But in fact, it's such a small amount that it doesn't matter. So now if I just release the tensioner, you'll see it take up the slack. Okay. And then remove my clips, which are just there to hold the belt in place and stop it ballooning out. And there you go. And we're still in time. Yeah, all my camshaft timing marks are still there, and we're still all at TDC and everything. Lovely. So the next thing to do is just rotate the engine. Right then guys, so cam belt tension, there are quite a few ways of doing this. One is a method called the Verrill method, and what that does is you lock the camshafts there, both sides, you slacken the tensioner. Okay, so camshafts are locked, tensioner slackened, and then you crank this nut in a clockwise direction until both the long side of the belts, i.e. the side, not tensioner side, but the long side, goes taut so that you can pluck it like a guitar string. And then the slack gets taken up by the spring naturally in your tensioner. So whilst applying force to the nut there, you need to get a chum to just tighten that, unless you can do it both hands, like one hand on here applying rotational tension that puts the tension on that side of the belt and that side of the belt simultaneously. Well, obviously you can do one at a time, and then you tighten that. So that's the Verrill method. Okay, the next method is the Ferrari method, which is where you rotate the engine so you don't have any thing locked up, it's all unlocked. These tensioners are loose, i.e. the nuts are loose, and you rotate the engine and you look at the tensioners moving, and when they move to the maximum amount, as in they're putting the maximum amount of force, taking up the most slack, that's where you lock them off. So you have to look and see where the tensioners move most. Right guys, the method that I use is basically rotate the engine to any sort of random position, then I pull the long end of the belt basically to create slack, so I just turn the cams by pulling the belt, giving it a little bit of a pull and a twist. You're never going to break it, you know, if you break it doing that then you've got crap belts anyway. And then that pulls the cams around a bit, then I get a nice amount of slack on my long side, the non-tensioner side, okay? Then the method I use is I just feel for a little bit of slack, which I can do with my fingers like that. So I can move just a few, maybe an inch. I'd need to measure it, but it is just a thumb and forefinger is barely a touch. It's just got a little bit of slack in it. But, and also when you twist it, 45 degrees, 45 degrees. If you're going 90 degrees, it's too much. If you're only twisting 20 degrees, it's too tight, okay? So 90 degrees, it's too loose. But 45 in either direction, so 45, 45 is nice. Little bit of slack, thumb and forefinger is nice. The sound it makes, for those of you that, you know, really want to nail it down. Okay, so the sound it makes is this. It's a very low note. You can just hear it. Okay, and it'll be the same the other side. So here we go. If I just pull this side now, okay, and then listen for the slack, listen to it, that nice low note again. So they're nice and not too much tension in there. And again, 45 degrees, thumb and forefinger. So guys, the next thing, the final thing, is to check your valve clearances to make sure that they're all on target, and mine are. They're all at 0.38, which is what I wanted. One at 0.39, so that's nice. I better the old Ferrari saying at the local Ferrari place is a happy tappet is a slappy tappet. So that's what we're going for, happy tappets. So next thing is cam covers on. So what I'm doing here guys is just running the tiniest smidge of silicone just along this here. I'm keeping it very, very thin, although it's broadish. I'm just not letting it be too deep, because I don't want it to squidge into the engine, of course, and that's why I'm doing it on the outside edge as opposed to down the middle, so that it has a tendency to go on the outside. It's really just as a backup for the gasket, to be honest. And then I'm just going to go into here. This is a notorious area here for where the cam covers like to leak, just in the corner here. So putting quite a bit in there because the ring there acts as a barrier anyway. So and then I'm just going to lie the gasket on it. Okay, like that. And then it has a tendency to squidge out, not in. So yeah, this just helps hold it into position as well. And you see the gasket has a tendency to go. I'm pressing it sort of out more than in. And I shall do that to the centre one, and then to the one down the bottom here, and then I shall put the sealer on the actual cam cover itself and then put it on. Just gone over the plug holes only on that one because the oil is free to spill over anyway, so there's no point doing it anywhere else. And then I shall lay this one in. It's interesting that these are sided, so you don't get them the wrong way round obviously, but the holes are offset anyway, so you're okay. And now for the last one along the bottom there. Right, the other, all three gaskets are on now, so the next thing is I'm just going to give this a little bit of oil so that when we have the first start up, even though I've lubed this already, I'm just making sure that these wells are filled up a bit, so that when we have our first start up there's oil in there, and it just allows the thing to run with a nice bit of oil. There are a number of kind of other products on the market that you can buy for like a gel that you put in, but I don't like any of that sort of stuff. I have heard horror stories about the gel blocking the oilways and things, and if anyone's seen the old 80s Cosworth engines being built, the Formula 1 Cosworth engines, they actually just use engine oil, so if it's good enough for an 80s Formula 1 engine, it's good enough for an 80s Ferrari. That's the way I figure it. So yeah, so just coating everything nicely, a bit over the top, but it doesn't hurt. Right, ready for the cover to go on. Okay, so having applied a little tiny bead of silicone to the mating surfaces on the cam cover, I've just slid it on, and now I'm just going to torque these up, starting from the centre and working out. Assuming you want to go the silicone route, you can apply a little bit of silicone to the gasket. It's only very thin, but that's assuming you wanted to go that route, and you can't reach around the back of the engine. This is the easiest way to do it. There you go, there's the gasket held in place on the rear bank, ready for the cam cover to go on there. Right then guys, they're all on and torqued up nicely. The next thing is just to trim the ends off, which are here. It's a small detail, but yeah, don't forget to do it, otherwise you're going to leak here. So I just use a little knife and just trim them off. Now it's just a case of finishing off with putting all the ancillaries back on, the electrics, etc. This end, and the cam belt covers, etc. that end. Okay guys, yeah, I'll put the covers on, and obviously I shall fire it up before I put the engine cover back on, so we can you know, just make sure everything's all right and look for any little things I may have missed or whatever. While the engine cover's off, it's easy to see. So and then we'll just give it a go. Okay guys, I've cranked the engine to bring the oil pressure up, and you know, you always do that after a rebuild. So the oil pressure's up. I just you know, disconnect the fuel pump, and now I'm going to go for a start. There you go guys, it's warming up nicely now. Always get a bit of smoke coming off when you've done this. You know, you always spill oil down the rear of the exhausts. Eventually it burns off. If it doesn't, and your cam covers are leaking. Lovely sound of a Ferrari singing. Anyway, I hope this video has been useful to you as to how to do a cam belt change, and as you can see, whilst I was doing the change, I actually did smarten up my engine a little bit as well. I think you'll agree it looks rather splendid sat there in the middle. The red really sort of stands out. All right, it's orange, it's not actually red, it's an orange. So I shall go over it now and do the injectors and clean up the fuel injector pump and stuff like that, and various other little bits, but basically it's looking pretty nice now. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, hope it's been helpful to you.